It began with an email. A cryptic, anonymous message, routed through a series of untraceable servers, landed in the inbox of a mid-level British tabloid editor. No subject line, no body text, just an attachment titled, "For the World." Signed, T. At first, it looked like another hoax. In an era where deep fakes and Photoshop are cheap and abundant, the editor nearly dismissed it. But curiosity won. He opened it, and what he found turned everything upside down. According to the leak, the documents weren't photoshopped. They weren't digital fakes. They were paper-scanned medical records, some with original hospital watermarks still visible, others marked private and confidential in red ink. The name on every document? Meghan Markle. The claims were staggering. Diagnoses pointing to irreversible fertility issues, IVF treatment attempts marked inconclusive, and repeated notations of no viable embryo development. Most chilling of all was a note from a fertility specialist, dated just months before Archie's supposed birth, stating, "Patient informed of extremely low probability of natural or assisted conception." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What did it mean? Were the royal babies not biologically hers? Were they adopted, surrogate-born, or, as another claim later suggested, represented by high-end, ultra-lifelike dolls built for public appearances? And then came the final blow. The source of the leak wasn't a whistleblower from the hospital. It wasn't an angry former friend. It wasn't even a royal staffer. It was Thomas Markle. That's right. Meghan Markle's estranged father, once publicly ridiculed, silenced by legal threats, and exiled from both royal events and family dinners, had stepped back into the spotlight with something he claimed could no longer be hidden. Whether out of guilt, anger, or a warped sense of protection for the royal bloodline, Thomas Markle decided to blow the lid off what he called the most expensive illusion in modern monarchy. But before we dive deeper, let's stop and ask the most important question. Why now? The timing of Thomas Markle's actions raises more questions than answers. It's been years since he last appeared in any serious media spotlight. After the infamous staged paparazzi photos before Meghan's wedding and a string of publicized health problems, most assumed he was done speaking out. He'd gone quiet, possibly silenced by legal restrictions, or perhaps simply tired of fighting a daughter who had long cut him out of her life. Yet, in the quiet shadows of his Rosarito Beach home in Mexico, Thomas had apparently been sitting on this information. Whether he obtained the documents legally or through back channels remains unknown. But sources close to him claim he had kept a sealed folder marked Meg Truth tucked away in a drawer for years. He reportedly told a friend over whiskey one night, "One day, the world will know, and it'll be because of me." Still, this wasn't just another family feud spilled into the public eye. This revelation strikes at the heart of something sacred: children, parenthood, legacy, royal bloodlines. If Meghan Markle indeed suffers from infertility, if the births of Archie and Lilibet were either fabricated, orchestrated through surrogacy without transparency, or worse, staged with actors or dolls, then the implications are seismic. This isn't about scandal anymore. It's about deception at the highest level, involving both the British monarchy and the global media. It forces a difficult question. Could the entire image of Meghan as a glowing, maternal figure have been a carefully curated mask? And if so, who else was in on it? Did Prince Harry know? Did Queen Elizabeth ever suspect? Did the palace's PR machine play a part in perpetuating a lie for the sake of royal continuity? Those questions have haunted the public in whispers, but now they are front and center, screamed from headlines across the globe. In this video, we're going to piece together this puzzle. We'll walk through the timeline of Meghan's pregnancies, from her announcement of Archie's expected birth to the quiet, almost suspicious way Lilibet was introduced to the world. We'll explore the photos, videos, and body language analyses that led some eagle-eyed fans and skeptics to start asking, why does something feel off? We'll scrutinize official birth records, reported christening details, and the odd absences of hospital witnesses, midwives, or medical professionals in royal press releases. We'll also uncover shocking testimonies from insiders who now claim they were told to keep quiet or lose everything. But more than anything, we'll dive into the man behind the bombshell, Thomas Markle. What drives a father to betray his own daughter so publicly? Is he simply vengeful, Bitter about being excluded from royal life? Or does he truly believe he's protecting something greater, perhaps even the truth itself? As we peel back the layers of this story, you'll hear disturbing allegations and explosive claims. But you'll also encounter moments that are deeply human, moments that make you pause and reflect. Because no matter how much power, privilege, or media training someone has, truth has a funny way of rising to the surface. And once it does, it doesn't care whose crown it tarnishes. In the coming chapters, we'll lay everything bare. We'll explore each piece of the alleged medical documentation, delve into the world of ultra-realistic dolls and high-end reborn infants, and connect dots between Meghan's public image and what could be one of the biggest PR illusions in modern royal history. Prepare yourself, because by the time we're done, you may never look at that royal baby photo the same way again. Are you ready to uncover what Thomas Markle just made impossible to ignore? Then keep watching. This story isn't about bitterness or revenge anymore. It's about the truth. And the truth is finally screaming through the cracks of royal perfection. It started with whispers, hushed murmurs in dark corners of online forums, curious glances from investigative journalists, and speculative conversations among former palace staff. But when the documents finally surfaced, those whispers turned into a storm. The alleged medical records that Thomas Markle provided to the press were not vague or abstract. They were painfully specific, dated across a span of nearly a decade, from Meghan's early 30s to shortly before the birth of her first child. The records included multiple appointments, consultations, and test results from fertility clinics both in the United States and the United Kingdom. While the authenticity of the documents is still under dispute, the volume and detail contained within them are difficult to ignore. The first notable record was from a renowned reproductive endocrinology clinic in Los Angeles, dated 6 years before Meghan's marriage to Prince Harry. In it, the attending physician noted that the patient, identified as Rachel Meghan Markle, was seeking fertility preservation options due to concerns about age-related infertility. The report confirmed a diagnosis of diminished ovarian reserve, a condition that indicates a lower number and quality of eggs remaining in the ovaries. This would not have been unusual. Many women in their 30s seek fertility consultations to assess their reproductive health, especially if they are postponing motherhood for career or personal reasons. But what followed was far more alarming. The second batch of documents, dated approximately 2 years later, indicated that Meghan had undergone at least 2 cycles of IVF treatment, both of which reportedly failed. One report from a San Francisco clinic stated plainly, egg retrieval yielded 2 viable embryos. Neither implanted successfully. Patient advised of decreasing reproductive potential. These documents also noted that Meghan was under emotional stress due to media pressure and interpersonal family conflict. While this might seem like standard medical language, it speaks volumes when viewed through the lens of the unfolding royal saga. Even then, Meghan was reportedly navigating a complex emotional and professional life, which could have impacted her fertility outcomes. But the most explosive revelation came from a clinical summary dated just 5 months before Meghan announced her pregnancy with Archie. The attending physician, whose name has been redacted, wrote, "Patient counseled on the improbability of natural conception or successful IVF without donor eggs or gestational surrogacy. Options discussed include egg donation, embryo adoption, and third-party gestational carriers." In other words, by all medical accounts found in the leaked documents, Meghan Markle could not have conceived naturally. Not then, not easily, possibly not ever. And yet, less than half a year later, she stood before the world, radiant and beaming, announcing that she and Prince Harry were expecting a child. How? How did a woman, documented as having multiple failed IVF attempts and being advised to consider donor eggs or surrogacy, suddenly and miraculously fall pregnant? Some chalked it up to a miracle, nature-defying odds. Others speculated quietly that she had finally found a successful treatment path, one that she kept private. But after the leak, those speculations turned sinister. Because nowhere in the royal statements, press releases, or Netflix specials was there even a whisper of surrogacy or fertility struggles. Meghan's image was shaped as that of a strong, natural mother, a symbol of feminine strength and resilience. The world saw her baby bump, followed her maternity fashion, and awaited the royal birth with bated breath. And yet, behind the polished photos and poetic documentaries, was there a hidden truth buried in clinic transcripts and private diagnoses? The records allegedly go further. One note from a London-based fertility specialist, possibly accessed during Meghan's time in the UK, reveals that Meghan underwent consultation at a discreet private facility known for catering to high-profile individuals. The report reads, "Patient inquired about confidentiality protocols surrogacy process, declined psychological evaluation, requested donor anonymity and private third-party arrangements. Strict non-disclosure requested." That single entry shattered any lingering doubt in the minds of many skeptics. Why seek such intense privacy around something as intimate as childbirth, unless the narrative needed to be carefully managed? Adding to the mystery was a separate line item within a billing statement attached to the documents. The charges included consultations not only for Meghan, but also for a third-party gestational carrier. This all but confirmed what the rest of the files implied. Someone else may have carried Archie, and perhaps later, Lilibet. And if that were the case, it begs a fundamental question. Why the secrecy? Surrogacy, after all, is not a scandal. Many women, including celebrities, public figures, and even royalty, have embraced it openly. It is a path to motherhood that requires courage, emotional strength, and vulnerability. Yet in Meghan's case, not only was surrogacy never acknowledged, it was seemingly buried under an avalanche of curated images, PR statements, and narrative control. The only conclusion one could draw from the leak is that there was a deliberate attempt to construct a version of events that was more palatable, more heroic, more royal. And then there were the notes marked "Do Not Release" in capital letters, scribbled along the margins of several internal emails between medical staff. These emails, allegedly intercepted from within a Los Angeles clinic, detail heated internal debates about whether to cooperate with external investigations or keep Meghan's records locked under celebrity patient privilege. "We can't afford a media war," one staff member reportedly wrote. "They'll bury us in lawsuits." Another email, allegedly written by a clinic administrator, raised concerns about unauthorized access. "If someone's leaking these records, we could face a HIPAA disaster. Lock everything down. No one talks." Which leads to another layer of intrigue. If Thomas Markle did indeed acquire these records, how did he get them? Did someone from inside the clinics leak them to him? Did he pay for them? Was it blackmail? Or, and this is where the ethical boundaries blur, was he simply handed them by someone who believed the world deserved to know? Some have speculated that the documents may have come from Meghan's own circle, former friends, betrayed insiders, or legal aides who once had access and decided to turn. But in the end, Thomas was the one who lit the match. He didn't just hand over a folder of papers. He handed over a grenade. And that grenade has now exploded into a global crisis. The implications of the documents are not confined to Meghan and Harry. They stretch into questions about the legitimacy of royal succession, the ethics of media manipulation, and the line between private and public truth. If the documents are real, and so far, no credible denials or lawsuits have emerged challenging their authenticity, then the world has been lied to. Not misled, lied to. And perhaps the greatest question of all is not what was in the documents, but why it was hidden. He was once a name nobody outside of Hollywood production sets had heard. A quiet lighting director, a behind-the-scenes man whose life was steeped in cable runs and technical specs. But Thomas Markle's world changed the moment his daughter Meghan became linked to the most storied royal family on earth. The spotlight, once meant for stars on screen, turned on him, and he wasn't ready. Thomas Markle's journey from doting father to international whistleblower is nothing short of cinematic. But it's also tragic, complicated, and riddled with unresolved emotion. His public bombshell, the leaking of Meghan Markle's alleged medical records, was not an impulsive outburst. It was, by most accounts, the crescendo of years of isolation, heartbreak, and humiliation. When Meghan Markle first emerged into the public eye as Prince Harry's girlfriend, the world was enchanted. She was beautiful, eloquent, biracial, and American, a mix that broke royal norms and delighted progressives. But quietly, in Rosarito Beach, Mexico, her father watched the transformation of the daughter he had once known, with a mixture of pride and confusion. He had always supported her, paid for her schooling, helped her land auditions, believed in her, even when she was a struggling actress. Yet, when she was catapulted into global fame, their bond fractured. Many recall the pre-wedding fiasco. Thomas Markle, reportedly hounded by paparazzi and desperate for a positive image, agreed to pose for staged photos in a tuxedo shop. The images were intended to be innocent, but their sale to tabloids sparked outrage. Meghan and Harry, allegedly furious over the deception, cut ties. Thomas was not invited to the royal wedding. His health crisis, which reportedly kept him from walking his daughter down the aisle, only deepened the divide. From that point onward, Thomas became a ghost in Meghan's story. She spoke sparingly of him, often casting him in a problematic light. In interviews, she would allude to toxic family members, media manipulation, and the heartbreak of betrayal. Public opinion was not kind to Thomas. He was painted as clumsy, greedy, attention-seeking, a man who sold his daughter out to the press. But behind the media narrative was a father who was hurting. Friends who remained close to Thomas say he was devastated by the rift. He would often sit alone in his small house, watching interviews of Meghan on TV, tears streaming down his face. He kept photos of her as a child, framed drawings she'd made in grade school, handwritten letters from her college days. It wasn't fame he craved, it was reconciliation. So why leak the records? To answer that, one must understand how Thomas viewed Meghan's transformation. In private conversations, he often expressed disbelief at what he saw as a carefully constructed persona. He felt she had shed not just her past, but her very identity. She was no longer the girl who wrote him sweet notes and made him handmade birthday cards. She was, in his words, a polished ghost. He was particularly disturbed by what he perceived as dishonesty around Meghan's motherhood. Though he initially celebrated the announcement of Archie's birth, over time, his doubts began to grow. The secrecy, the lack of hospital photos, the inconsistencies in public appearances, and the fact that, despite her claims of being close to her family, Meghan never allowed him to meet his grandchildren. It haunted him. In a leaked voicemail, allegedly sent to a close friend, Thomas can be heard saying, "If there are grandkids, I'd give anything to hold them. But something tells me I never will. Maybe because they're not real." That chilling admission is what many now point to as the genesis of his bombshell. The grief of a grandfather kept from his legacy, the agony of being erased from history, and the suspicion that perhaps there was a reason he had been pushed so far away. Those around him say Thomas spent months agonizing over the decision to go public. He reportedly sought legal advice. He considered leaking anonymously but feared no one would believe the documents without a name attached. In the end, he chose to stand by the truth, as he saw it, with his name front and center. The emotional toll was immense. Days before the leak hit the press, Thomas reportedly secluded himself. He stopped answering calls, stopped eating regularly. Friends feared he was spiraling, but he was resolute. He believed the world had a right to know. In a handwritten letter later published by a journalist he trusted, Thomas explained his motives. "I am not proud of this, but I have watched the world be misled. I've watched my daughter play roles off-screen, roles I can't recognize. I have lost everything in silence. My relationship with Meghan, my health, my dignity. I am not doing this to hurt her. I'm doing this because the truth matters. And I don't believe I'll live long enough to see it told any other way." The world's reaction was divided. Some saw him as a bitter old man, seeking vengeance. Others saw a broken father, desperate for connection, for meaning. But few could deny the raw pain that poured from his statement. Thomas had lived in isolation for years, watching his daughter's rise, her marriage, her children, all from the margins. He was present in none of it. And while Meghan had often been praised for breaking royal tradition, Thomas felt he had been thrown away like a relic of a life she wanted to forget. There are moments in this story that are deeply human. Beyond the fame, beyond the politics, is a father who adored his child and watched her disappear behind a fortress of fame, handlers, and carefully worded statements. Did he go too far? Possibly. But in his mind, this was the only way he could be heard. And in doing so, he did something that no royal biographer, tabloid, or palace insider had been able to do. He reopened the case on Meghan's motherhood, not as a matter of gossip, but as a matter of truth. Whether his evidence holds up in court, whether DNA tests or further leaks confirm his claims, one thing is certain. Thomas Markle's bombshell has set the world ablaze. Long before medical records ever surfaced, and even before Thomas Markle's voice cut through the silence, the internet was already abuzz with whispers. Whispers that, at first, were laughed off by mainstream media and written off as the delusions of conspiracy theorists. But as time wore on, those whispers began to echo louder, gathering pieces of circumstantial evidence, strange inconsistencies, and moments caught on camera that refused to be forgotten. The rumors about Meghan Markle's pregnancies began almost as soon as the palace announced them. The official statement from Kensington Palace, released in October 2018, simply said the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were expecting a baby in the spring of 2019. It was delivered in standard royal fashion, brief, controlled, without medical specifics. That's when some began asking, why no due date? Why so few appearances? Why so much secrecy? At first, the chatter was mostly confined to internet forums and YouTube comment sections. Observers began posting side-by-side comparisons of Meghan's baby bump from public appearances, arguing that it appeared to change size dramatically from day to day. Others dissected footage from royal walkabouts and charity visits, highlighting moments where the bump seemed to shift, collapse, or look unusually firm for her stage of pregnancy. Then came the bump collapse, the video that launched 1,000 theories. It was taken during Meghan's visit to the Brinsworth House nursing home in December 2018. As she bent to greet a resident, the bump appeared to momentarily flatten or fold. The footage spread like wildfire online. Major media outlets ignored it, but alternative platforms exploded with speculation. Critics were quick to label it an optical illusion. Camera angles, shadows, or the fabric of her dress. But for many viewers, it planted a seed of doubt. They began to ask questions that had no satisfying answers. Why was there no confirmed hospital where Archie was born? Why were there no photos of Meghan entering or leaving a maternity ward? Why did no medical staff ever give interviews or statements, unlike with Kate Middleton's pregnancies? Why was the birth certificate allegedly altered after release? Why was Meghan seen days after giving birth looking pristine and slim, with no signs of postpartum fatigue? These weren't just troll-driven accusations. These were observations coming from women who had been mothers themselves, people who knew, intuitively, that something didn't look right. The palace did little to quell the chatter. Their silence, far from bringing closure, only made the curiosity grow. Meghan and Harry opted for a private birth, a departure from the usual royal tradition of posing outside the hospital mere hours after delivery. For years, royal women had followed that protocol. Princess Diana, Kate Middleton, even Sarah Ferguson. But not Meghan. Instead, they released a carefully edited black-and-white photo of the couple gazing lovingly at their newborn's feet. No hospital, no delivery room, no medical personnel, just toes and narrative. As if scripted. Then, the couple confirmed the name, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, and held a christening. Except the christening, too, was private. Very private. So private, in fact, that no members of the press were allowed to attend. No details were given about the godparents. And the photos? Just a few official snapshots in a dimly lit room, with Meghan's mother, Prince Charles, Camilla, and the Queen absent. More questions. More unease. By the time Meghan's second pregnancy was announced, the public had grown more skeptical. This time, the announcement came via a photograph, Harry and Meghan, barefoot under a tree, with Meghan cradling her bump. The photo was shared globally, praised by many for its soft intimacy. But again, there was no timeline, no medical confirmation, and zero transparency. And then came the name, Lilibet Diana. That name, perhaps more than anything else, reignited the flames of controversy. Lilibet was the Queen's childhood nickname, an intensely private moniker, used only by close family. Many saw its use by Harry and Meghan as manipulative, but others saw it as something else, a smokescreen. The naming of the child diverted attention away from the real issue. Was there a child? Soon, footage from Meghan's second pregnancy began surfacing, and with it, more peculiarities. In one video clip, she walked toward a car, holding her bump. As she turned, the bump seemed to swing slightly away from her body, as though it were attached with straps. In another video, while seated for an interview, the bump appeared unusually high and rigid for a woman supposedly in her third trimester. Again, skeptics were shouted down. But the questions refused to die. Then came the testimony from an alleged palace aide, anonymously published by a fringe tabloid. The aide claimed to have overheard a conversation between Meghan and a stylist, where she allegedly complained about adjusting the belly harness too tightly. The publication was ridiculed. Yet, the story refused to fade. It was consistent with what many had already observed. Surrogacy became the word on everyone's lips. But even that explanation came with complications. If Meghan used a surrogate, why not admit it? Surrogacy is legal in many countries and accepted in high society circles. Several celebrities, including Nicole Kidman, Kim Kardashian, and Elton John, have openly used surrogates. If it were simply a medical choice, why not share it? The answer, according to insiders, is branding. Meghan and Harry's narrative, one of overcoming adversity, building a family in the face of opposition, and reclaiming their autonomy, relied heavily on image. Meghan's motherhood was central to that image. She was not just a duchess or a former actress. She was a mother, a feminist mother, a symbol of strength. Admitting surrogacy would not have destroyed her image, but it would have complicated it. It would have opened doors to other questions. It would have required timelines, transparency, explanations. And those things, apparently, were too dangerous. Another clue that fueled the fire came from hospital insiders who noticed that neither of the hospitals believed to be involved. The Portland Hospital in London for Archie and Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California for Lilibet ever released press confirmations. Usually, even with high-profile patients, hospitals provide brief official statements acknowledging royal births, at least anonymously. In Meghan's case, nothing. In fact, in the case of Archie, the birth certificate was initially filed with no hospital listed. Only later, and after public backlash, was the information amended. It didn't help that staff at the Portland reportedly signed strict NDAs. One nurse, who later left the profession and spoke off the record, claimed that everyone was scared to say a word, like something bigger than royalty was going on. Then there was the investigation into baby dolls. YouTube channels and online sleuths began digging into the world of high-end, hyper-realistic dolls, known as reborns. These dolls are crafted with such accuracy that even close-up photography can't distinguish them from real infants. They have veins, weight distribution, soft body movements, even simulated breathing. Manufacturers confirmed that some of their clients were ultra-wealthy individuals who used these dolls as stand-ins for various reasons: personal trauma, public appearances, or, disturbingly, as part of fabricated family narratives. One former designer of these dolls, speaking anonymously, claimed that a woman matching Meghan's physical profile had once placed a private order for 2 custom models, one male, one female, through an intermediary in Los Angeles. Though impossible to prove, the timing of that alleged order lined up almost exactly with Meghan's pregnancies. Whether or not those dolls were ever used publicly is still a matter of speculation. But several video analyses of Meghan and Harry holding their children show strange details. Arms too stiff, heads too upright, no spontaneous movement, and, in some cases, bizarre hand placements that seem designed to block full views of the babies. Taken separately, each of these facts can be dismissed. A shadow here, a fold of fabric there, a media decision, a PR angle. But taken together, the surrogacy whispers gain weight. The inconsistencies become patterns. The patterns form a narrative. And the narrative threatens to unravel everything Meghan and Harry have built. Official documents are often assumed to be the gold standard, the concrete proof that cements truth into history. A birth certificate, in most cases, is the ultimate confirmation of a new life. It includes the essentials: the date, place, parentage, and legal names. In royal tradition, birth certificates not only serve a bureaucratic function, but symbolize legitimacy, inheritance, and continuity. That's why, when it came to the birth certificates of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, expectations were high for transparency. But what followed instead was a string of anomalies, redactions, and contradictions that only deepened public suspicion. Let's begin with Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor's certificate. According to official reports, Meghan gave birth to Archie on May 6, 2019, at 5:26 a.m. Initially, there was significant confusion about where the birth took place. Media outlets were led to believe Meghan had delivered the baby at Frogmore Cottage, their then residence in Windsor. But this theory was quickly disputed by insiders and royal correspondents who had noticed oddities in the timeline. When the birth certificate was finally released by Westminster Register Office a few weeks later, it stated that Archie had been born at the Portland Hospital, an exclusive private maternity clinic in London. That in itself wasn't surprising. The Portland had served high-profile clients for decades. But what did raise eyebrows was the delay in releasing that information. More concerning still were the alterations. Initially, the birth certificate listed Meghan's name and title as Rachel Meghan Markle. Later, it was revised to read only, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. The change was not only unusual, but legally questionable. In the UK, birth certificates are legal documents. Retroactively editing the name of the mother, especially when she is a known public figure, triggered questions. Who ordered the change? Why was it made? And was Meghan consulted? The Sussexes offered conflicting explanations. A spokesperson for Meghan initially claimed that the alteration was made at the request of the palace. Buckingham Palace, in turn, remained silent. Later, Meghan's team revised their statement, suggesting it had been a clerical correction for consistency with royal protocol. But royal biographers and legal analysts weren't satisfied with that answer. In legal terms, the name change made it more difficult to verify maternal identity. Without Rachel Meghan Markle listed, anyone outside the royal circle would find it harder to link the certificate to her actual medical or legal records. To critics, it was a calculated move, a way to obscure the paper trail. Furthermore, the certificate made no mention of medical staff, midwives, or witnesses to the birth, standard in most UK-issued birth certificates. This omission raised further questions. If Meghan had given birth at the Portland, why weren't the attending medical professionals listed, as had been done in Kate Middleton's and Princess Diana's birth certificates? Where were the signatures? The verifying stamps? The usual secondary information? Then there's the issue of the time frame. Meghan and Harry announced Archie's birth on May 6th, but held off on showing him to the public until May 8th, 2 full days later. This delay, highly unorthodox by royal standards, was explained away as the couple's desire for privacy. But the lack of a hospital photo, the absence of a visible medical discharge, and the fact that not even the Queen was seen visiting the hospital raised many eyebrows. Royal births are usually marked with official bulletins placed on ornate easels outside Buckingham Palace. In this case, a simple typed announcement was posted hours after the birth had supposedly occurred, raising even more speculation. Critics and conspiracy theorists took this as evidence of something hidden. Was Archie born when they said he was? Was Meghan the biological mother? Or had a surrogate delivered the baby in secret, with the birth certificate merely serving to reinforce the public narrative? Let's shift to Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. Born June 4, 2021, in Santa Barbara, California, Lilibet's birth brought with it even more red flags, particularly due to the Sussexes' relocation to the United States and the different legal standards governing birth documentation. In California, birth certificates are filed at the county level and typically list the name, date, location, and parents of the child. These documents are public record unless sealed for specific legal reasons. Lilibet's certificate was eventually obtained by several American outlets, but what it revealed was just as cryptic as Archie's. The certificate listed Meghan's occupation as Princess of the United Kingdom, a title she technically held by marriage but rarely used, especially after stepping back from royal duties. Critics saw this as either ironic or manipulative. Why claim a royal title in a country that you've chosen for privacy and independence? More notably, the certificate again lacked mention of a doctor or delivering nurse. There were no attending physician signatures, no delivery notes, and no hospital ID provided. While some counties allow redactions, the complete absence of professional verification was unusual, especially given the child's high-profile status. Adding to the confusion, no official hospital press release was issued regarding Lilibet's birth, despite her being born in Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, a facility known for issuing statements when celebrity births occur. Staff reportedly signed confidentiality agreements, and no photos of Meghan entering or leaving the hospital were ever seen. This fueled the same questions raised during Archie's birth. Was the certificate manufactured post-birth? Was the child born at the time and place claimed? Or was this another step in a meticulously controlled narrative? To deepen the mystery, a former administrator from Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, who later spoke anonymously to an independent podcast, claimed that no such patient matching Meghan's legal identity was admitted on or around June 4th. The administrator added that if Meghan had been admitted under a pseudonym, a temporary holding document would still exist, but none could be found under known aliases linked to Meghan Markle. Supporters argue that the Sussexes had every right to protect their privacy, particularly after enduring years of media scrutiny. But skeptics counter that the legal nature of birth certificates requires transparency, not just for royal lineage, but for public trust. When you are part of a monarchy, even one you claim to have left, public accountability does not just disappear. Another troubling detail lies in the choice of names. Lilibet, the Queen's childhood nickname, was said to be bestowed with her blessing. But royal insiders later disputed that claim, stating that Her Majesty was informed, not consulted. The difference between the two is seismic in royal protocol. If the Queen did not approve the name, it signaled a clear breach of etiquette. If she did approve it, it raised the stakes of the child's legitimacy. Naming a child Lilibet places her squarely within the royal legacy, a symbol of continuity. But if the child was not biologically born to Meghan, or born at all in the manner stated, then the name serves as a clever emotional anchor to deflect suspicion. Who would dare question a child named after the Queen herself? Still, the paperwork doesn't add up. One legal analyst from a UK-based firm specializing in high-profile family law cases reviewed both birth certificates and commented anonymously. If this were any other case, it would trigger immediate court scrutiny. The omissions are too numerous. The alterations, too convenient. It's not just about ink and paper. It's about what those documents are meant to signify. Birth certificates establish identity. They grant nationality. In royal terms, they lay the foundation for succession, privileges, and inheritance. Any attempt to obscure the origins of those documents undermines not only public trust, but the constitutional framework of monarchy itself. There's one more detail worth mentioning. Neither birth certificate includes official notarization stamps visible on scanned copies. While this may be standard in some jurisdictions, the lack of such a mark raises the possibility that copies circulating publicly may not be the original official records. And if that's true, the question becomes, where are the originals, and why haven't they been produced to end the speculation? In summary, the birth certificates of Archie and Lilibet, intended to put rumors to rest, have only deepened the mystery. From retroactive edits and anonymous hospital stays to vague job titles and missing verification fields, the documents raise far more questions than they answer. And in the absence of clarity, the whispers have only grown louder. At first, it sounded completely insane. A theory so wild, so absurd, it was instantly dismissed by most mainstream commentators as nothing more than tabloid fantasy. But like so many ideas that begin on the fringes, the so-called high-end doll theory didn't disappear, it grew. The theory posits that Archie and Lilibet, the two children of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, were not merely born via surrogates, but in some public appearances were represented by ultra-realistic, lifelike dolls crafted by artists in the booming niche industry of reborn dolls. These dolls are so hyper-realistic that they have fooled medical professionals, parents, and even grandparents in controlled settings. And according to proponents of the theory, they may have been used in royal photo ops, walkabouts, and even televised documentaries as stand-ins for real children. While at first glance, it sounds far-fetched, the theory is built on what some call an unsettling pile of visual inconsistencies, behavioral oddities, and glaring absences. And the more one digs, the more bizarre the evidence appears to become. To understand how this theory gained traction, it's important to understand what a reborn doll is. Reborn dolls are handcrafted, painted silicone or vinyl dolls designed to look and feel like real infants. The best of these creations are indistinguishable from human babies at a glance, even up close. They possess weighted limbs to mimic newborn body mass distribution, rooted hair to look authentically unkempt, and even breathing mechanisms or simulated heartbeats. Some reborns even have internal sensors that react to touch, making them twitch, coo, or move slightly in the arms of the holder. They are often used by collectors, bereaved mothers, or therapy programs. However, high-profile clients reportedly use them in a more secretive capacity. One former reborn doll manufacturer, who now works in luxury design in Beverly Hills, claims she received a peculiar commission order around 2018, months before Archie was announced to the world. According to her statement given to an independent podcast, the client requested 2 dolls, one male, one female. The specifications were unusually detailed: olive skin tone, hazel brown eyes, delicate hair rooting, and flexible silicone with realistic movement. The order, she claims, came through a celebrity fixer, an intermediary known to operate in elite Hollywood circles. She didn't know the final destination of the dolls at the time. But after Archie and later Lilibet were introduced to the world, she says she recognized the features. It was the face, she explained. I'd stared at that silicone head for days during production. When I saw the royal baby photo, I froze. It was too close to be a coincidence. Of course, that alone isn't proof. A resemblance doesn't confirm a conspiracy, but her testimony wasn't isolated. Multiple independent reborn doll artists have since stepped forward, some anonymously, claiming to have received inquiries from clients connected to stylists, image consultants, or PR managers with ties to the Sussex brand. More tangibly, visual analysis of key public moments involving the children started to raise new questions. In the Netflix docuseries, Meghan and Harry are seen cradling what appears to be Lilibet in a number of scenes. However, in a frame-by-frame breakdown uploaded by a video analyst, several oddities stand out. In one moment, the infant's hand appears unnaturally stiff and perfectly rounded, as though molded. In another, her head remains completely motionless despite being repositioned. More tellingly, in a close-up clip where Harry kisses Lilibet, there is no visible breath fog or movement from the child. Her skin texture appears unusually matte, with no real-time flushing or micro-expressions. Similarly, during a brief appearance of baby Archie while the couple visited South Africa in 2019, critics highlighted footage where the baby's eyes seemed static and the cheeks overly smooth, similar to vinyl or silicone. Meghan's hand, some noted, was positioned oddly, blocking the baby's jawline in nearly every photo taken. Defenders argue that babies sleep. They're still. They're unpredictable. But in the most publicized moments, the baby was always perfect, never crying, never squirming, never doing what real infants typically do in such high-stress environments. And then there's the question of temperature. At an outdoor engagement in autumn weather, Meghan was seen holding Archie, dressed in a wool hat and wrapped in thick layers, while she wore only a light jacket. The baby didn't seem to sweat, fuss, or react to the environment in any way. Parents around the world noted it felt uncanny. But the most damning, and perhaps disturbing, piece of visual material emerged from an event in Canada in early 2020. During the brief media engagement in British Columbia, Harry was filmed adjusting a stroller containing Archie. When the camera zoomed in, Archie's leg appeared to bend unnaturally, at an angle no human limb could tolerate. The footage was taken down shortly after it was uploaded, but not before eagle-eyed watchers screen-recorded and shared it widely. Many believe that single clip is the smoking gun. In the months that followed, more clips, images, and reports accumulated. Former royal staffers began making cryptic remarks. One ex-press aide, interviewed off the record, stated, "We were trained not to comment on anything, not even internally. It was the most intense media lockdown I've ever seen." When asked about the babies, he paused and said, "I never saw them. Not once. Not even from a distance." It's not just the visuals that raise suspicion. It's the total absence of third-party confirmation. In a family where everything is photographed, tracked, and archived, it is telling how few independent people have been documented meeting or even seeing Archie or Lilibet in person. Even Meghan's extended family members, including her own father and siblings, have never been permitted to meet the children. Tyler Perry, who was named Lilibet's godfather, has never publicly confirmed holding the child. Oprah Winfrey, who had deep ties to the couple and interviewed them in their explosive CBS special, also never spoke about meeting the children firsthand. Even within the royal family, there is surprisingly little photographic evidence showing the children interacting with their royal relatives. No birthday photos with Queen Elizabeth, No tea party snapshots with Prince William's kids. Nothing but studio-lit, carefully arranged images. This wall of silence only fuels the speculation. But why would anyone do this? The answer, say theorists, lies in control. Meghan and Harry have built their brand on emotion, narrative, and identity. Motherhood and fatherhood are cornerstones of that brand. It humanizes them. It makes them relatable. It also, in the case of their Netflix and Spotify deals, makes them profitable. In the world of image management, a child is both a blessing and a liability. If the couple used a surrogate and didn't want to acknowledge it, or if there were complications with visibility or health, a reborn doll would allow them to continue presenting the image without risk of leaks, public meltdowns, or awkward optics. It's PR management to the most disturbing degree. But others believe the theory goes even deeper. They argue that the use of high-end dolls wasn't merely about convenience or secrecy, but about fabrication. That perhaps the children were never intended to be part of the public's reality, that their existence was never meant to be proven, only portrayed. In this narrative, the dolls become a physical symbol of a lie so grand it defies belief. Naturally, the theory is hotly contested. Experts in photography, parenting, and media have come forward to debunk it, offering explanations involving lighting, angles, or behavior typical of calm infants. Yet many of their explanations fall flat when scrutinized against footage, timelines, and known behavior patterns. Still, no official statement has ever been made by Meghan and Harry addressing the doll allegations. Not a denial, not a clarification, just silence. And in the absence of answers, the vacuum fills with suspicion. This theory may sound like science fiction, but in a world where deep fakes can fool governments, where avatars speak at political rallies, and where artificial babies can trick trained nurses, the line between real and unreal is thinner than ever. Whether you believe it or not, the high-end doll theory speaks to something larger, a crisis of trust. When public figures build an image so carefully, so meticulously controlled, the people begin to question whether they're seeing authenticity or just an elaborate performance. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced their multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix in 2020, it was heralded as a bold new chapter in their post-royal life. Freed from the constraints of the monarchy, they promised to tell impactful and inspiring stories through documentaries, docu-series, feature films, and more. But even as the announcement made headlines and sparked excitement across Hollywood, questions lingered beneath the surface. What exactly were they going to deliver? And how central were Archie and Lilibet to the content and the contract? At the time of the announcement, Meghan and Harry were not seasoned producers. They were still settling into their new California lifestyle. But they had something far more valuable than industry credentials, a globally recognized brand, a tale of rebellion against the crown, and two young children who, by default, became media gold. Archie and Lilibet weren't just royal offspring. They were the first biracial children born into the British monarchy. Their very existence was historic. Media companies, marketers, and Netflix executives knew it. And so did the Sussexes. Behind the glossy headlines and PR blurbs, the whispers within the entertainment industry grew louder. Many insiders began to speculate that Archie and Lilibet were not just part of the Sussex story, they were the story. And this is where things get uncomfortable. When the Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan premiered, fans eagerly tuned in hoping to gain insight into the lives of the couple who had so famously broken away from royal tradition. What they found was a carefully curated narrative, one built on love, struggle, and survival, but also heavily padded with tender family moments, including home videos of Archie, unseen footage of Lilibet, and scenes depicting idyllic domestic life. At first glance, it all felt genuine. But upon closer inspection, inconsistencies began to emerge. Take, for example, a scene in the second episode, where Harry is shown bouncing Archie on his knee while reading him a children's book. The camera cuts between wide shots and close-ups. In one wide shot, Archie appears animated, slightly squirming, with visible hand gestures. But in a jarring cut to a close-up, the child's face looks stiff, motionless, almost lifeless. His eyes don't follow the book. His fingers remain curled in the same position, frame after frame. Viewers began circulating the scene online, debating what they had just seen. Was it a glitch in editing? A moment where Archie froze? or something more manufactured. Another scene shows Meghan pushing a stroller with Lilibet while on a walk through a sunny Californian trail. The stroller is angled away from the camera the entire time. The baby is never visible. Not a peep, not a movement, not a cry. Critics questioned, why include this scene at all if the child remains hidden? Moments like these appeared repeatedly throughout the docuseries. Soft focus, overexposed lighting, careful cropping, all seemingly designed to obscure rather than reveal. When Archie does speak in the documentary, his voice is heard but never paired with a clear visual of his mouth moving in real time. The audio is layered over B-roll footage, images of the family at the beach, walking through gardens, laughing together. It's a common documentary technique, but in this context, it felt oddly convenient. As more viewers began re-watching with a critical eye, some began to ask, were these scenes staged using footage not of Archie and Lilibet, but of stand-ins, or worse, props? Of course, to the average viewer, these questions sounded absurd. But within media circles, even seasoned editors and producers were left puzzled by the production choices. One anonymous producer who had worked on family docuseries for major platforms described the Sussex project as carefully overproduced, noting, every frame felt like it had something to hide. Then there's the contract itself. According to reports, Netflix signed the Sussexes to a deal valued between $100 and $150 million. That's not the kind of money handed out for vague promises or activism. That's blockbuster territory. It's money that demands a hook, a reason for global audiences to tune in. And the biggest hook Meghan and Harry had, their children. The docuseries was advertised as an intimate look into the family's life. But how intimate can it be when so much of it feels like performance? In scenes where Meghan is playing with Archie on a blanket in the garden, her eyes keep darting to the camera. Harry, while holding the baby, often shifts uncomfortably, as if aware of the filming in a way that breaks the illusion. Critics of the couple argued that they were using their children as emotional leverage to gain sympathy, engagement, and media value, without ever truly revealing anything authentic. The children appeared just enough to prove their existence, but never long enough to feel like part of a real family dynamic. One particularly controversial moment was the release of Lilibet's first birthday photo, taken not by a professional royal photographer, but by a friend of the couple in their backyard. The photo shows Lilibet sitting in the grass, wearing a blue dress, with a mild, distant expression on her face. The image is beautiful, but to many, it felt artificial. A tech analyst later ran the photo through forensic analysis tools designed to detect image manipulation. While there was no conclusive proof of digital doctoring, the results indicated that several layers had been composited together. The lighting on Lilibet did not perfectly match the surrounding shadows. The grass beneath her was slightly blurred in a way that suggested selective editing. Was it simply a touched-up photo, or a staged image of something more synthetic? Adding to the intrigue, no family members outside of Meghan and Harry have ever been photographed with both children. Not the Queen, not Charles, not William and Kate. No cousins, no playdates, no candid paparazzi shots. For two children of such enormous public interest, they remain remarkably unseen. Even Tyler Perry, who was chosen as Lilibet's godfather and hosted the christening ceremony at his home, has not released a single image with the child. In an interview, he described the event as beautiful and deeply emotional, but offered no photos, videos, or even quotes from other guests who were there. This lack of verification only fuels suspicion. In the world of entertainment, optics are everything. When millions of dollars are on the table and brand identity is built around family, those optics become currency. The documentary, the photo releases, the staged family videos, these were not simply glimpses into private life. They were product placements, storyboards, a curated portfolio used to justify the payout. And perhaps that's where the discomfort lies. The children, real or not, were never truly the focus. They were a vehicle, a tool, a backdrop against which the Sussexes projected their reinvention. Whether Meghan and Harry deliberately misled the public or simply exercised extreme privacy, the effect remains the same. Viewers were sold intimacy and vulnerability. What they got was a string of carefully chosen fragments, each one more pristine and calculated than the last. Nowhere in the docuseries does Meghan address surrogacy rumors. Nowhere does Harry clarify timelines or hospital stays. The most we get are passing references to the media's cruelty and their desire to protect their kids. But as the footage is dissected and inconsistencies mount, the silence becomes suspicious. What remains now is a damaged public trust. Netflix may have gotten its clicks. The Sussexes may have secured their bag. But the viewers, those who tuned in looking for authenticity, were left with a sense of unease. Who are Archie and Lilibet? Have we really seen them? Or have we only seen what we were allowed to see? Buckingham Palace is no stranger to scandal. Over its centuries-long history, it has weathered everything from abdications and affairs to divorces and televised accusations. Yet few events in recent memory have sent such tremors through the royal institution as the growing cloud of suspicion surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's children. The rumors of surrogacy, the allegations of deception, and now the suggestion that Archie and Lilibet may not even be real in the traditional sense. All of it has forced the palace into a defensive crouch, teetering between silence and damage control. But the real question isn't what the palace is saying publicly. It's what they're doing behind closed doors. Sources close to royal courtiers, speaking under strict anonymity, paint a picture of confusion, anger, and quiet panic. While the royal family has maintained a consistent policy of never complain, never explain, the situation involving the Sussex children has reportedly triggered unprecedented internal meetings. Unlike previous scandals, which typically involved personal behavior or political oversteps, this touches the very fabric of royal legitimacy. Inheritance, bloodlines, succession. According to insiders, the issue became impossible to ignore after the leaked medical documents, allegedly released by Thomas Markle, reached the tabloids. Though not publicly acknowledged, palace aides immediately began cross-checking the claims. Several senior officials requested briefings on Meghan's maternity details from the time of Archie's birth in 2019. However, many were shocked to find the records within palace files were sparse, lacking the detail typically associated with a royal birth. Everything was vague, one former staffer revealed. There were no attending physician notes, no official statements from hospital liaisons, and the Queen herself reportedly only saw the baby for a matter of minutes during a private visit. That visit, which took place just after Archie's birth, has since been the subject of speculation. Photographs released at the time show Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, Meghan, Harry, and Doria Ragland surrounding the newborn. Yet many royal watchers observed how little of Archie was visible in the frame. The baby's face was obscured, his eyes closed, and his body oddly angled. At the time, no one gave it much thought. But in hindsight, the image's vagueness is startling. Behind the scenes, several senior royals were allegedly troubled by the lack of transparency. One palace insider reported that Prince William, known for his meticulous attention to duty, asked why there was no standard hospital press bulletin or appearance outside the Lindo wing, where both of his children had been presented. "This is a tradition," he reportedly said. "We all did it. Why the secrecy?" The response, allegedly, was that Meghan had experienced complications and opted for privacy. Yet even that didn't sit well with some. Queen Elizabeth, while known for her stoicism, was said to have asked aides in private whether the line of succession would be affected if surrogacy had indeed occurred. The answer she received, per royal legal advisors, was complex. British law currently permits children born via surrogacy to inherit titles and rights, provided the proper paperwork is filed. However, the lack of public acknowledgement and the potential dishonesty in public appearances raises concerns about public trust and legitimacy. More troubling still, aides have expressed concern that if the children were not biologically born to Meghan, through either adoption, donor conception, or surrogate, and this was not disclosed to the Privy Council, it could amount to a breach of constitutional protocol. The royal family, though symbolic in its power, functions within a strict legal framework. Titles are not merely honorary, they are bound to lineage. A duke's offspring can inherit only if born in accordance with the legal norms of the crown. Any deviation from that, especially concealed from the appropriate authorities, could be seen as fraud. King Charles, now at the helm of the monarchy, has reportedly been especially disturbed by the developments. Though long known for his complicated relationship with Harry, insiders suggest the current issue has left him visibly shaken. A source close to the monarch stated, Charles is deeply conscious of the crown's reputation. He spent his whole life preparing for this role. To have this sort of scandal touch the family just as he's trying to stabilize things, it's devastating. Charles is also said to be concerned about how the Commonwealth nations, many of whom have only recently reaffirmed their support of the monarchy post-Queen Elizabeth's passing, will view the legitimacy of royal descendants born in secrecy, outside the traditional framework, and potentially under false pretenses.